Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Eggs. Today's special guest is certified career coach and resume writer, founder of Ikigai Coaching and Consulting, Christy Rosen. Christy enables career seekers to define, clarify, and establish long-term and short-term career goals that will provide fulfilling results. Working with hundreds of job seekers at all levels looking to enter the workforce or transition to a new role entirely, Christy has led her clients through the many challenges of a job hunt by leveraging proven techniques and strategies. Joining us today for a conversation about gaining clarity around the job you want or that career you're looking for when feeling lost, networking strategies that will supercharge your job search, negotiation tactics to ensure you're paid what you're worth, and so much more. Please join us in welcoming to the show the incredible Christy Rosen. Hey, Christy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
So good. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We're thrilled to death to have you.
Thank you. Me too.
Good. Yeah, I came across a few of your posts while on the job hunt, and I followed a few of them because some of your posts on LinkedIn were actually like, that's really good. I want to follow her work. And so after a few more, I was like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And sure enough, here you are. So I'm thrilled that you decided to come on and talk to us.
That's awesome. I don't know if I knew that. So yeah.
That's well, excellent. And I think the timing is right for a conversation like this. I mean, we talked a little bit briefly before the show that the market is changing. You're hearing in the news every day, another company laying off, and all these things. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there too, but you're also hearing about all the, just sort of the people who are entering the workforce that maybe hadn't been there prior. So I think that a conversation around, how to find a career, not only in a time of need, like right now, perhaps if you've been laid off from one of these tech companies or something, but also if you are maybe an experienced veteran in a company and this is your opportunity to maybe try something new or pick a new role altogether.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of an interesting time. And what I've been hearing and reading, it's really affecting a lot of different groups that maybe you don't even think about. There's been a huge layoff of recruiters. And if you have recruiters that are being laid off, obviously people are getting laid off at those companies and they don't need the recruiters because they're not planning on hiring. So, and that sends a red flag to everyone. Oh my gosh, you're letting go all these recruiters at Amazon and at Google and what have you. I know Google had a big layoff of people, and a lot of them were recruiters. So it sets this kind of ball rolling in the wrong direction of what's happening and what's going to happen. And I think we're all really stressed out about, the economy and what's going to happen, in the next few years. And so I think people are a lot more stressed out right now if they are seeking and if they've been let go. But I have to tell you, going back to LinkedIn, LinkedIn has done such a great job and you can form such an amazing community on LinkedIn. And I think if you really utilize it the way you're supposed to from a networking perspective and connecting with people, that is one of the biggest resources that I've seen people be so incredibly successful with. And it's just unbelievable. There are times when people will post, I was one of the people that just got let go from whatever company. I've been with them for 20 years. I'm feeling lost, yada, yada. And they have 1,000 people respond. They have people saying, check out this person, or they're tagging people in it. And a week or two later, they're like, thank you guys so much. Now that's not everybody, but I've just landed something, or I landed an interview, or I've got 5 interviews just based on that one post. So a lot of that kind of stuff is going on, which is a positive, which I like to kind of focus on. There is a lot of good. It's interesting, in the tech space, which is where I mainly work. I was talking to someone who runs a boot camp just the other day. And I said, what is your outlook look like right now? Are you seeing that people are still signing up for your boot camp? What are your placements like? And they're like, we're actually doing well. Are we a little bit down in placements? Yes, but not by very much. I said, then what are you doing? Where are you placing your people? And they said, well, we're kind of pivoting there are so many companies that need developers. You don't have to be at Google, Amazon, like Meta, all that kind of stuff. I mean, she said, we're focusing on banks, like, mortgage companies. Like, there are tons of companies out there that need software engineers. So I think people mentally need to pivot away from the big, FANG type companies and move in a different direction. So you have to kind of pivot with what the industry is doing. So yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and you are seeing, I think that there's this like, I don't know, gut reaction to when you hear in the news that Meta laid off 12,000 people. Like in your head, it's like 12,000 people. That's just a gazillion people. Where are all these people going to go to work and stuff like that? And so I think you make a really good point that, I mean, not only are there opportunities in maybe untraditional areas, but there always were, right? I mean, this idea that people were, that you had to work at Facebook or you just weren't going to be a software engineer is kind of crazy. But nonetheless, like, I mean, I catch myself thinking that way a lot. So I think that's a great observation that you point out there. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and you started to, and it sort of started with Mike's comment, was sort of the power of LinkedIn and the power of networking. And prior to LinkedIn, I think it was more common to do networking in person and a lot of that stuff. And people really seem to use LinkedIn, as I don't know, like an addition to their in real life activity. Then COVID happened and, LinkedIn seemed to have kind of taken the place of that, right? Lots of virtual events and virtual things going on for networking. Then as we've come out of pandemic and sort of, tried to get back to whatever normal is now, I don't know, like I'm seeing more people starting to abuse LinkedIn and start to treat it more like other social networks, more like Facebook or something like that than for strictly networking. And I'm wondering if it's because people are going back to real life, but now they still have this social network with all these people. And so I wonder if you have any thoughts about just sort of what the state of networking is, not just on LinkedIn, but how it is, in general. And then if you have any tactics, because like I'm sort of a firm believer in it. I mean, I haven't had a job interview maybe since I was like 16 or something, because every job I've ever gotten has come by word of mouth or recommendation or referral or something like that. Right. Yep. And I think that's how it works for a lot of people. So I wonder if you just wouldn't talk about sort of the power of networking.
Yeah. And I'm going to say it works for a lot of people. It's kind of that saying, it works if you work it. Because a lot of people don't network. They don't know how to network. They're too afraid to network. I mean, think of the people that are more introverted. So when you say, a lot of people don't. Like the majority, I would say 90+% of people I work with have never truly networked and they don't know how to do it. So it's a little bit frightening just knowing that there's so many people out there and they're just applying to jobs on job boards. That's all they're doing. Literally maybe a 5% success rate when you just sit on job boards. And the other thing, and I'll get into the networking piece, but the other thing to think about is when you're just sitting on job boards, more than likely, you're not even focused on what you're just applying. Like, oh, this job sounds pretty good. I could probably do this job and I'm just going to apply and I'm going to hit quick apply. That's another thing. Quick apply can kind of go into a black hole. Does it work? Yes, but it's not as good. Go to the website, go to the company website and apply online there. But then back to the networking piece, it's worked for me always. I think my first job out of college, I used the newspaper to find the job. And then I sent my resume with a letter. And that's probably the only time I've really gotten a job that way. Everything else has been pretty much, knowing someone and getting in that way.
So we actually kind of just jumped right into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work history, where you come from and how you got into doing this?
Okay, that sounds good. Well, from a work perspective, I started off kind of in the corporate space. I worked with MCI. We worked really hard and we partied really hard and then they blew up. Probably partied a little too hard. And then, but I learned a lot. It was a really great environment, great learning, did sales, did training, I guess the sales piece was really fun. And I gained a lot of skills, moved to another company that was also in the same space, telecom, I was like a business operations manager. And that was it's not a total fit for me. Oh, it's really interesting. This is kind of a nice story. Is my first job out of college was working for Merrill Lynch.
Okay.
They hired me. Of course, my dad was like, oh, gosh, that's fabulous. That's fantastic. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't know why they hired me. I mean, I don't know why I applied for that job, but I applied for it and they hired me. And I was in their broker transfer department, which basically is you're moving multi-million dollars between brokerage firms. And they put me in the job of problem solving when they screwed up. Like, and I'm sitting here going, this is the worst job I could absolutely be in. My major was communication. Okay. Barely passed the math and the analytics and all that. And so here I am at Merrill Lynch, and I stayed for 3 months. I had my review, and the guy was like, "You're doing a great job." And I'm like, "I hate this job and I hate my life, and I'm giving my 2 weeks notice." And he's like, "What?" And then of course I had to tell my dad. So I went to waiting tables. That was the best decision I think I ever made in my career, because I knew I was in the wrong place. I just felt it. I was miserable all the time. Sundays were miserable because I had to go to work on Monday. So, and thank God I could wait tables. I'm not a great waitress, but I could do that. So, but that's kind of one of those learning experiences. Some people just get stuck in their careers and they land, and they don't always land right. And they just kind of stay with it because the money's there and it's good enough. And I feel sorry for people that do that, because I feel like it's so important to use the actual skills that you have. And when I jumped over to MCI, I just literally soared, like started on the phones and sales. 8 months later, I got promoted to a manager. Another year later, I got promoted to training manager. I mean, when you're in the right environment and using your skills, you know, the world is your oyster. And I absolutely lived that. So I stayed in telecom for a good 10 years. And then I had the kiddos, and then the kids principal, once my daughter was in school full time, which both of them now were, he walked up to me. He's like, "Do you want to be a kindergarten teacher's aide?" I'm like, "Yeah, when do you want me to start?" He's like, "Do you want to think about it?" I'm like, "No, I can start on Monday." And he's like, "Well, you have to do lunch." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "It's bad." And I'm like, and it was awful. It sucked. But anyways, I needed to get out of the house. I needed to, be with people. And I hated kindergarten because sounds awful. I didn't care about their boo-boos. Like, I wanted to teach. I wanted them to learn something. So by the time I hit high school, I'm like, okay, this is cool. I like this. This is much better. So I got my master's in education, and did that for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. I don't know if I did it for that long, maybe 6 years. And I don't know how old I am. And that didn't make sense. So, and then I kind of fell into like director of education, loved that, could do that job with my eyes closed. It was really fun to help parents and the kids and so forth. And then I fell into career development. And my husband, he's with like CPG, like packaged goods. And so, we've been all over the place. We have lived, I can't even count how many homes we've had, moving with his job. So my career has been kind of like, all over the place. Just kind of picked and chosen what to do based on where I was at the time. But when we were living in Indianapolis, I fell into career development. Someone posted something about, a trainer. I'm like, I love training. I can do that. I went and interviewed.
It was for a boot camp, right?
No, that was the second one. This was the first foray into career development. It was basically working with people in Indianapolis that were either underemployed or unemployed for 57 weeks. There was like some government program that they had. And they started me off doing trainings in all these different centers for people who had lost their jobs, but they had to have training in order to have their, get the payment. And I learned the interview. I mean, I just learned everything. They taught me everything. I mean, stuff I had no idea about. And it was such aha moments for me that I was like, this is fantastic, because now that I'm training, I see them going, I had no idea. So seeing the impact on their faces, that's what really was like, this is amazing. I love this. And ever since then, I've just stayed in the and they were kind of tech oriented as well, but I've kind of stayed in the space. And the next job was with 2U, which was a boot camp program, or is a boot camp program. 2U bought out Trilogy. I had joined when Trilogy was thing. And then 2, you bought them out. And that was just tons of coaching and doing workshops. And you really get to know the people. And it's a great space to be in, because these boot camps, I think initially people are like, I don't know about them. And I think now people are like, no, this is great. These people are learning great skills. They do a great job. It's very intense, as you know, and companies like that you've had that experience. So it's a positive. But that was a lot.
It's totally fine. No worries.
Well, and actually, I mean, it's super interesting. I'm sitting here taking notes while you're talking. There are so many things to unpack, first of all, but I want to frame it this way. In today's time, you have a consultancy called Ikigai. Mm-hmm. Ikigai, for people who don't know, is sort of a Japanese phrase for finding one's purpose or understanding your direction. And what's really interesting about your journey, so to speak, or your path, your career path, is that it looks like a person on a journey. Does that make sense? So basically, you started out doing a job you didn't like. You took on whatever work you could take. You kind of negotiated the things that were hard or that you didn't enjoy, and you found the stuff you liked, and then you pursued it, and you went into this education path. And then, the whole point was you wanted to teach, so you moved into this other thing. And so if you were to look at all of these things like on a piece of paper, you might go, oh, well, they're kind of disparate. She's a little bit all over the place, but there's sort of this through line, right? Which is this idea of, teaching or training or educating or whatever. And I think part of that is orienting to a path. And I think there's a lot of people who jump into a career search or something like that. And the expectation is, especially for younger people, that they're going to jump into the career they want and they're just going to go. And I think for a lot of older people, they did what you did, which is, I worked a crappy retail job for a number of years. And then I finally got a job doing design. And then I finally, started my own agency and blah, blah, blah. But I went through a path, right? But I did the things I didn't want to do first, right? And those things, you learn some skills, you pull some stuff out of that. You learn how to work hard, even if you're not happy about it, and all those kinds of skills. And I think that sort of part of a young career is really critical to being successful later in life, because you have to understand those sort of fundamental things. And I'm not sure everybody gets it when the idea is that you can just, fill out resumes and go right to work for Google or Facebook, or, you've seen the Twitter video floating around where the lady's going from the coffee shop to the, nap lounge to the, whatever.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not sure that that's totally illustrative of what goes on over there. But I mean, people see that, especially young people see that and go, oh my God, I want that. I need that. Yeah. And, they don't go, well, wait, I really would rather, throw freight for a little while first, and then I'll look at Twitter, and so I think hearing your journey is really, really cool. And I think it really ties into what you're doing now in your consultancy. So I think that's really great.
It does. It all kind of aligns. And it's nice at this stage in my career, like you said, like reflecting back on what I've done. There is a thread through everything. And I think the main thread is, communication, interpersonal skills, like EQ, all of those types of things. That's what I'm good at. Some of the jobs that have been a lot more detail oriented and analytical, I'm like, I got through it. But all the other stuff. And when you land in a place that, yes, I'm using my skills, and I can do this, like I could train for over an hour or 2 hours. And just by the end, I'm exhausted, but I just get so impassioned with what I'm talking about, because I feel good about, the content, but also the impact. So I feel like, today, I'm thinking about my son who, he's trying to figure out what he wants to do. He's living in LA. He's been out there for several years. He decided not to go the track of getting a bachelor's degree, which I'm like so down, like you figure it out, you're on your own journey. And he got into solar sales, and, these guys were assholes. Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
And they were jerks. And my son, he's a nice guy and he wants to do the right thing. And he's like, these are not my people. Yeah. He had a couple of bad experiences, but he worked so hard. But he's like, but this isn't it. So he's like, I got to go back to waiting tables just to pay the rent. And I'm going to figure something else out. I'm like, that's what you do. You got to try a few things to figure out where you feel comfortable. And like you were saying, Ryan, early on, I graduated. I didn't even think about what I was going to do. I was just like excited. I graduated and I moved to Denver and I met a guy and I'm like, oh, this is great. Where my kids today are like so stressed out. Like, what am I going to do? And I need to make money and I don't know what direction I want to go. And I'm like, you'll land. So there's something going on now that I don't, unless it's just me.
Well,
like,
one of the things that, I mean, this is just another one of the notes from sort of your story, but one of the things that I think is really critical, and maybe it dovetails back into what we were talking about before, about people don't know how to network, is this idea of, taking risk or aversion to risk, right? And so, because I think for so many people, especially younger people, I have a 16-year-old that is like right on the cusp of needing to find a job because I can't afford his lifestyle.
Right.
And so we are, we're having these conversations with him too. And I'm seeing kind of what you're describing, right? This idea that, there's this pressure to try and deliver right out the gate. And I think some of that has to do with risk. And it's this idea that, as parents in our generation, we've been lucky enough that, for many of us, our kids have grown up in relatively sheltered environments. They, they're safe. They have heat and air conditioning. They have the internet. They have, like things are pretty good for a lot of people these days. Not to say that there aren't exceptions, obviously, but, in our family situation, we've been very lucky that way. But for our son, I guess luckily, because my wife and I are both just like naturally super cynical and sarcastic and have raised a super sarcastic son, we tend to roll with risk a little easier than some people do. But the idea that he doesn't know how to network, like, hadn't occurred to me, but now I'm going, God, maybe he doesn't really know how to go out and just have a conversation with somebody, right? And so, but I think some of that goes back to this idea of taking risks, being averse to risks. And it sounds like as you were working through your career, even if you didn't think of it in the frame of risk, it was a risk to go from one job to the next, or to move from finance to telecom, or to, go from telecom to education, or to go, there's all these different leaps that you made throughout that, maybe the stakes weren't real high. Maybe there was no real downside if you failed, but, nonetheless, it was a risk. And so, and I think for a lot of people, these people that don't know how to network and like doing resumes online and doing the quick apply and all that kind of stuff. It really does feel like you're doing something, right? Like, you're pecking at keys all day and you're uploading resumes and you're doing all this stuff, right? So it feels like you're getting a ton accomplished, right? So this job search could go on for months and months and months because it feels like you're working. But it seems to me that what you're doing is actually avoiding the risk of going and putting yourself out there in person, or delivering a resume, or putting on a suit and going into a business and asking for employment, or, any of these things. And it all feels like risk avoidance to me. And so I wondered if you just had any thoughts around risk, and in terms of like teachable moments. Is there anything you might advise somebody, maybe, if you're counseling somebody, maybe even your son, how would you talk to them about risk and sort of help them understand, that, there's kind of no downside to just trying.
There really isn't. And, I feel like the networking piece, so many people avoid, and I agree, it's because I don't think they know what to do, because nobody's ever taught them. You don't learn it in high school. You don't learn it in college. You may have colleges, if you go to college, that has career development, but you have to pursue them, and a lot of people don't, and so they don't know how to do it. And I talk to people that are my age, your age, that have no idea what to do. And so I think the point that they don't understand, and what you were talking about, is you're just sitting there applying and you feel like you're really making a difference, and you're moving forward with your job search. You're really spinning your wheels. And the risk part is putting yourself actually out there. And that could be a number of things that you could do, which is definitely, the way I always talk about networking is any place you are with other people, that's an opportunity to network. Like, I'm that person that will talk to anyone, anywhere. Like in line at the grocery store, I'm having a conversation with the person behind me. Not all the time, but I am that person. So to me, you can network. I used to use the example, if you're at a cocktail party, I don't know why I would use cocktail party. Who says that? But that's what I used. And it's like anywhere there are people, it's your opportunity, because you never know who they are or who they know. And that is your opportunity that you're missing out on. And that has happened to me over and over again with getting opportunities because I'm doing something, I meet someone and they're like, oh, I know this person. I'm like, oh my gosh, give me their information. I would love to talk to them. And
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just on LinkedIn this morning and I saw a post about a guy that was talking about how he got his first job by selling his car. And the guy that came and bought the car, they struck up a conversation and he got a job in tech because he sold his car to this guy who worked in tech and opened the door for it. So,
Okay.
I mean,
That exact thing happened to my husband when we were in Denver. Literally. My husband, okay, so quick story. Do we have time for a quick story?
Yeah, quick story.
Okay, so I met this guy in Colorado, who's my husband now. And he had this car that literally looked like someone had taken a shotgun to the side of it because it had been his previous two sisters had driven it. They got into an accident. They banged it out because they didn't want to pay to get it fixed. So it looked like a shotgun. He had a rope tying down the trunk so the trunk wouldn't open. And okay, so a story before the story. We were out in California because he's from LA. And we went to this beautiful restaurant that had like a veranda around it. It was really fancy for me. And you go up and it was for brunch and they had valet. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really fancy. So anyways, we go in, we have an amazing bagels and lox, and it was so fantastic. We come back out and the place is packed now. Above the parking lot, there's like the veranda, and the valet guy brings my husband's car up facing like the beautiful side facing everyone. And my husband starts screaming at the valet, what did you do to my car? That's, blah, blah, blah. And everybody just burst out laughing. So that's a good story about my husband. And so when we lived in Denver, he wanted to sell that piece of poop car for like $200 or something, $300. And he met this guy and he sold him. I mean, the car was awful. And the guy looked at him, he goes, I can't believe you just sold this to me. He said, I'm a recruiter and I know someone that is looking for a salesperson. Are you interested? Are you looking? And he said, yes. And he had been looking, and my husband, he's got a great personality. He could talk to a brick wall and have a fantastic time. Great. However, he wasn't doing well in interviews. And so he kept just like getting the first interview, but not getting to the next stage. And I had just told him like, no, just be yourself. You just have to be yourself. You've got a great personality. Go in like you're just going to have fun, like you don't care. That's all you need to do is act like it doesn't matter. And so this guy set him up with this job, and he met this, and it was with Bristol Myers. And it wasn't. It was with Dial. And the guy walks into the lobby. They were going to meet in a hotel. And my husband walks up. They shake hands. They start walking back to the conference room. And my husband says, hey, man, are you into baseball? Because it was baseball season. And the guy turns around. He goes, are you kidding me? And they probably talked for an hour about baseball, football, every ball that there is, they talked about. And they left there best friends. And they have been best friends for almost 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
That's
he
cool.
obviously landed the job.
No, I love that. And I think that there's sort of some fundamental truths in there, right? Like ideas that people can use in developing a relationship, right? I mean, there's this old adage, this idea that you work with people that you know, like, and trust, right? Or that you'll buy from those people, or that you want to work with those kind of people, whatever. And so, using the example of selling a car, right? I mean, a big part of that is that, right? Do I trust that you're going to show up with a car that works, that does the things you say it'll do? Do I know you well enough that I'm not worried you're going to pull a gun on me or something? And, do I like you? Are you friendly and personable and all that stuff, right? So your opportunity in meeting somebody in person, and this goes maybe back to the power of networking, is, being able to sort of demonstrate your ability, even just by being you, right? I mean, maybe there's nothing more than that, but this ability of being able to demonstrate who you are in person is so much more powerful than submitting a resume online or something like that.
Absolutely.
And so I think that, to take that story and try and give, something back to our audience who might want to try and, maybe they're looking for a job. It's like, as much as you can get done with filing resumes and things like that, like that's almost like in my life and my career, it's always been the last step. It's a formality because we have to have some documentation on you.
Yep.
Every other opportunity or every other piece of the opportunity has come along by, so-and-so introduced us, or, we met through, I did a project for somebody else and they thought that was cool, or, whatever. And then they meet me and we're friendly and we get along and we crack jokes. And then it's like a no-brainer to work together. Right. And
Exactly.
so you can't communicate all that through a resume. And, and I'll say, as somebody so I've been, more or less self-employed for the last 20 or so years, but every now and then I have these little stints where business is low and I start thinking, well, maybe I'll go back to work in an ad agency or something and, try and get some new experiences and try and grow up or whatever. And so I go and I start applying for all these places, and I catch myself going, these people, I look like every other designer. I could have just come out of college for all they know, right? I've been doing this for 25 years and nobody would know. But I can put all the, the accolades and the acronyms and all that stuff on my paper. But it's like, at the end of the day, like, they don't know anything about me. And so, but if I just did a quick project for them, like, we'd know, right. It would be like obvious. And so I like the story of the car sale, or, buying and selling a car as a way to just sort of demonstrate, who you are as a human. But I think that sort of, one step further is what networking is all about. Sure, there's probably strategies as it comes to networking, but so much about it is just people understanding who you are and knowing you.
Yeah.
Yep. I hate to keep going down story time lane here, but my first job out of high school, my buddy was washing windows and he needed some extra, I was like, hey, I'll go sell for you. So I went to a car dealership, approached him in a suit and tie and said, hey, my buddy's selling, he's doing window washing services. Would you guys like to have your windows washed? And they hired me to sell cars on their lot because I had the, personality and the willingness to go and talk to people. So it just, you never know what's going to come from just opening your mouth and talking to people.
It's true. You don't. You never know unless you try. And I kind of talk about that with, it's weird saying you don't know what you don't know, but it is so true when it comes to job seeking. And if we circle back to what we originally were trying to talk about, is the networking piece on LinkedIn. Like, we know, if you're not on LinkedIn, it's knowing people, it's talking with people, it's thinking about people you went to college with, if you went to college, thinking about people that, you've known for a long time, alumni, friends of friends. Like, that's kind of like, you need to let that kind of grow. And what I always like to tell people, just for perspective when it comes to networking, is 5% success rate for just applying to jobs online, 80 to 85% success rate for those people that network. And it is a huge discrepancy between the two. And it's pretty much the case. So when I talk about using LinkedIn, I want to kind of address that because I never really dug into it. It's important to understand how to do it, because a lot of people don't know how to do it. They're like, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? And there's lots of different things that you can do that can be considered networking. And let's say someone just put their profile together and they've done a stellar job, because you've got to have a stellar profile. You can't have the green background. You can't have a stupid picture. I'm sorry if you guys have the green background. You got to have the about section. You got to talk about yourself. That's a great place to show your personality as well as your experience, because you can't do that on your resume. So the hiring managers, recruiters, they're going to look at your LinkedIn profile and all the other stuff that goes into it. So when you have that and you really start reaching out, which means, A, you're connecting with people that you want in your network. So you want to be a little choosy, because you're creating a network that you want to be able to grow and use, and vice versa. So don't just connect with anybody. Take a look at who wants to connect with you, accept them if you think it's a good fit. If not, it doesn't matter. They're not going to remember that they tried to connect with you, because a lot of people just connect. But the next thing is moving in the direction of, let me start posting, but maybe I don't feel comfortable posting. So I'm going to start commenting. Boy, I'll tell you what, the comments, I kind of learned that just, I don't know, when I started my own business, I was like, I really want to kind of work on this. And I got some advice, start posting on comments, use the comment section. that blew up. That was a really good resource. And if I'm thinking about someone who's in tech that maybe is trying to break into tech or just really any industry, talk about what you know. Find people that post on content that is around what you know and what you want to do. So you can add your 2 cents at any point and really dig into it. Then maybe start doing your own posts. I mean, I see a lot of people that are, I just graduated boot camp. These are the skills that I've learned. I'm really, looking for my first opportunity. It's been really hard. I've been going through this, that, and the other, bless you. And,
I muted myself so you wouldn't like blast everyone out, but you still got me.
Yeah. But, and then they blow up. Like, it's amazing how people just they can just put a little post out there and they go viral. I have only gone viral twice in the last 7 years. One of them was a personal post that I did years ago. And then the other one was not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago. And it was about networking, and it just went crazy, which was great, but it's also exhausting because you've got to keep commenting and keep that momentum going. But the biggest piece too, when you're thinking about the networking piece, is just reach out to anyone on LinkedIn. If you want to be, in the hospital space, go in there and type in hospital and look at all the people that are in jobs that you're kind of looking for. Or if you want to be in tech, software engineer, web developer, whatever, type that into the search mode and then hit people, and you're going to see all the people. Just reach out to them. A great example is I was trying to teach my son that. He had finished his profile, and I said, well, here's the next step. Find someone to connect with that's kind of in your field that you're interested in. The guy right away responds and accepts his connection. I'm like, see, that's great. Now leave him a note, send him a message. And he's like, what am I supposed to say? I'm like, just say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about the, tech sales. I noticed you've been in the industry for quite a while. Would you have a few minutes to speak with me? And he types something like that up. The guy replied immediately, gave him his phone number, and said, give me a call whenever you want to chat. I'm available. And that is how it's done.
It's amazing how willing people are to help people that are just getting their feet wet because they've been through it. I mean, don't be anyone that reaches out to me and has a question about audio, DJing, lighting, whatever. I always get back to them and I tell them, I try and help them as much as I can because I know how frustrating it is to try and figure it out on your own without having the help of YouTube and whatever else is out there. I also want to add on to a little bit about what you said as far as commenting in the posts, and it's not even just on LinkedIn. It's on YouTube. So like if you're in tech and you're learning how to do software and you're learning how to do a focus on Django, for example, like a specific platform, right? There's people out there that focus on those specific software languages and their platforms, and you can follow them on YouTube, and they'll go live all the time. And while they're going live and they're doing stuff, you can comment on, oh, that functionality is really cool. I like how you did that. I love watching you do this off the cuff of your head and be able to, follow how your brain works and just make comments like that. And the more interactive you are, the more willing, the more you're on their radar and more faces are going to see you. And so LinkedIn, YouTube, any type of social media out there, if you can find people that are doing what you do and you start interacting with them, your chances of getting a job and getting in front of the right people go up tremendously.
Way up. And that's a great example. Thanks for kind of, bringing that up. I mean, and I always tell people like the person, hold on, I've got to fix this because it's driving me crazy. Well, now it's just on my shirt. I forgot what I was going to say. The
comments.
The comments. No, I forgot. Hold on. It'll come back.
Squirrel.
Pretty much. It doesn't take much to get me off track, but comments. So it's important. I was on a webinar and I was in the comment section And this woman said, asked the person that was doing the webinar a few questions, and she was obviously talking, so I knew the answer, and I commented to her privately. I was like, this is what I think she's talking about, and this blah, blah, blah. So we started going back and forth. And at the end, she's like, hey, this has been really great chatting with you. Would you like to connect? And I'm like, sure, that'd be great. So we exchanged each other's emails, and she lives in Switzerland. I live here. We have been meeting for the last year every week to because she has her own business as well. And so we set goals for each other. Like every Monday, we put our goals together. We send them to each other. Like, what are we going to get accomplished? And every Friday we meet for like a half an hour. What did you get done? What questions do you have? Like, is there any? And we just, for a month, for a year, we've been doing this. And the other thing I was going to say is when you reach out to people, the people that accept and say, yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. Those are your people. Those are nice people. Those are the people that are going to help you. And it can take a lot of sending out those messages before somebody responds. But if you send a really professional, yet personal, more professional than personal, but message to people, whether it be recruiters, because you've just applied to a job, or people that are in your industry that, you find them on LinkedIn through the company, like, whatever company, put in the company name, go to the profile of the company and hit people, scroll down. Everybody's the recruiters, talent acquisition are at the top, grab a couple of them and then keep scrolling and find those job titles you're looking for. Reach out to them. I know you're busy. I'm trying to, you don't ever talk about I'm looking for a job, because when you're networking, it's more, I want to get to know you. And it's a two-way street. And people need to be aware of that. Like if people say, I'm looking for a job, you will never hear from anyone. You have to finesse your message so that they will respond and understand it is a two-way street. It's not just about you. It's about how can you help them as well. And then you want to stay in touch with them, especially if it goes well.
So,
and that seems like, oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, I was going to say LinkedIn has you can pay to have direct communication with whoever you want on there. And it's like their fee to just be able to message people. But if you send a connection request, you can add a note, and it has to be like under 250 characters. And you can, like, my generic go-to, like quick, hey, I want to connect is, hey, I saw a recent post that you did. I liked your content. I wanted to connect so I can follow your work. Nothing else. And they usually say yes. And then I say, hey, thanks for the connection. Let's stay in touch, go from there. But it doesn't have to be, hey, I'm desperate for a job. I saw you work in the field, and let's connect so you can hook me up. Exactly. It's not about you. It's about building the connection and the relationship. And then stay in touch. If you see a post that catches your eye, comment on it. And then if you see, like they're in need of something, I have a buddy that's a data analyst, and his daughter was getting into the what's it called, cybersecurity world, and he's like, hey, my daughter just took the test, and we're looking for some connections. Anyone out there available? And I referred him to two different people that I knew was in the field, but not necessarily like, I don't know if they're hiring, but here's two people that can help. Just try and help through your network, and it'll open doors for you. We're grabbing coffee next week, so it's great. Stuff like that helps a ton. Sorry, Ryan, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're okay. I just wanted to make a little observation, this idea of the two-way street. I think for most people who are looking for jobs, I mean, for the longest time, I think that employees always felt like they were sort of in a position of weakness to the employer, right? I mean, I need that money from you, so therefore you're kind of up here and I'm sort of down here, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we're in a kind of a good time, or maybe a better time than ever in terms of this two-way street, right? Like as people who are looking for jobs today are looking for companies to work for, they're trying to, they're seeking alignment. Do you align with things that I care about? Do you pursue the types of, I don't know, social justice I like, or do you pursue the charity work that I like, or, whatever. Like, I think there's a lot more to the job search than there ever has been before. And I think it's a lot more even. So it really has become this two-way street instead of like a two-way street up a hill. So I think that that's a really cool observation.
So, I do. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was going to shift gears. So if you've got a comment,
Go ahead, shift gears. No, it's totally fine.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to get into, and we dabbled a little bit with it earlier, was this idea of purpose and finding purpose. It occurs to me, just as we were sitting here talking, it occurred to me that, well, maybe a big reason that people feel stressed, whether it's our children trying to find jobs or whatever, or, anybody in a career, it seems that so much of the stress could really be derived from lack of purpose, not really understanding what we're doing or why we're doing it. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, clearly it's a guiding light for you in that your company is named for this idea of identifying purpose. But it seems to me that, while I believe that there's a little bit of, you need to do a little bit of the hard work and have the crappy job, work at some, place that isn't exactly fulfilling or something at one point in your life. I think that there's this phenomenon going on, and you were mentioning how there's sort of maybe something in the air or something going on that's a little different for kids. And what I wonder, or what I call it anyway, is this idea of sort of third party purpose, which is that we're busy leading with other people's purpose through what we see on social media or whatever else. Mm-hmm. And I've caught myself doing this to some extent, right? But you see the guy with the yacht, or you see the guy with the cool car, or you see the person that has, I don't know, is publishing Twitter videos while they walk around from coffee shop to coffee shop. You see all these different things. And I think sort of your visceral want gets translated into what you believe is a need or is your purpose, right? It's like, I want that bad enough that must be my purpose. I want to pursue that thing. And then you go into that career or whatever, and you find it's an empty vessel, right? You go into this and it isn't fulfilling at all. But I think that there's this thing that maybe we didn't have to contend with so much when we were younger, or, in sort of a pre-internet era or a pre-social media era, where you were allowed to be alone with your own thoughts and think about what you wanted to do for yourself and then pursue it. And you didn't have all the noise of all these third party people, pumping in, their idea of what they think is valuable or purposeful or whatever. Not to say there isn't some value you could derive from other people's purpose and seeing what's, what they think is interesting, or maybe you learn about something new. But I think that it has shifted the way that people think about work. And I think that this confusion is part of that stress that makes it so like, hey, this job isn't perfect for me. My God, I've failed. It's like, right. It's something like that. And so I wanted to just spend a few minutes of our conversation talking about purpose and how, if somebody was to come to you, for example, aimless, which I imagine make up a good share of people who might come to you, how do we start to, I guess, get in touch with ourselves or have a conversation with our own mind and start to uncover what it is we truly want versus maybe what society or these third party people have sort of put into our head?
Okay, so I want to take this in two different directions, but I'll start with what you just mentioned. When people come to me, they generally have had work experience and they've been let go, or they've decided to leave because they weren't happy with what they were doing and they want to find something else, but they don't know quite what that looks like. So it's the purpose behind, because a lot of times I think a lot of people can fall into a career like me. I totally fell into every career I've had. It was like just crashing into it. And I think a lot of people do that. And the people that I work with are kind of in their 30s and 40s. I'm finding that they've had these careers and now they're like, I don't like it. Like, I've been doing this. Maybe it's been paying the bills. Maybe it's allowed me to have some nice things, but I'm kind of at a point where I want to find something that's a little more meaningful. And when they come to me, we kind of sit down and I ask them a ton of questions like, what did you enjoy about, this job or this job that you've had in the past? What are some of the skills that you use that you found really is easy? But it also can go into, think of the last time you were doing something and you lost track of time. And that's absolutely lost track of time. It's been like an hour and a half and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've been doing this for an hour and a half. That is your purpose. That is your joy. That is the thing that you enjoy doing. And that's what you want to try and find with all kind of aspects that relate to career. So of course, if you're sitting there doing a puzzle, okay, that doesn't really work. However, if you are someone who really enjoys, or maybe you're going through YouTubes and it's like on data analytics, and before you know it, it's been an hour and a half and you've just seen all these different things in a specific field and it drives you. whatever the case may be, we really break down all these different elements of life and purpose. And what are some of your accomplishments? Why do you feel like that was an accomplishment? How did you get there? It's just a bunch of questions of trying to identify, because what the other thing when you were talking that I was thinking about is, I feel like, and maybe it's just my experience, but I feel like when I was young versus what my kids, it's a very stark difference in terms of going through high school and into college. Like, the way I think there's so much more stress put on kids today, where parents can go in and see their grades, and you didn't finish this assignment, why didn't you get that done, versus here's your report card, once a quarter, and you did great or you didn't do great, so get your act together. Now it's just every day, you didn't finish that assignment, why didn't you do that? You didn't do well on the test, didn't you study for it? And then when it's time to apply for colleges, the college applications are asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? What field do you want to be in? What do you want to do?
I don't know.
They're like 18.
Yeah.
So I think we're a little bit, for me personally, I think we're a little bit backwards. Is it okay to think about those things? Sure. But it didn't harm any of us. Like, I literally went to college because that's what you're supposed to do. There was no question about it. I decided to do communications because I thought that would be easy, to be honest. And then I just landed. Yeah. And there was no thought, there was no processing. But today everybody's stressed out. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make money? And of course, rents are high, and there's just so much more stress that when I meet with people, a lot of it is just kind of calming them down, resetting them so that they kind of do away with the stress that they've been dealing with, break that down, and move them in a more calm, kind of purposeful direction to go in. Yeah. And sometimes it's a lot of therapy, and I'm not a therapist, but I'm very honest with my feedback and stuff, which most people have liked. But I'm definitely not a therapist. But you know what? A lot of people should have a therapist when they've been looking and job seeking for months and months and months.
Well, it's very disheartening when you send 1,000 applications out and no one gets back to you. And actually, there's a lot of like trickery involved with that computer scans. If you don't have your resume right, you just get pushed to the side anyways. But having someone as even if it's you and you're not even talking about coaching, but just to complain about the fact that no one's getting back to you, having another person to talk to is important. And on your the topic of just going to college to go to college, don't do it. If you don't know what you want to do, hang out, figure out what you want to do first, and then specialize, because there's no reason to take on $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of debt and then get into a field that you're not even going to apply what you went to school for.
I mean, even in your career, you mentioned, that you went to school for communications, yet you didn't do communications. And, my sister-in-law went to school for social work and works in tech. It's like we all did something, and none of us are doing anything related to our degree. So I think that's good advice, because the one thing we do all do is pay back our student loans.
I just went to a coding boot camp and got hired at a radio station. So it's like,
and it's funny. So one of the things, this idea of purpose, it's sort of, I think it's elusive for a lot of people. And I think what you're uncovering is this idea about, or I think maybe what you're manifesting is this, like, as people sit and have conversations with you, they can shed all this external stuff and start to drill down to what it is through your questioning. But one of the things that just occurred to me, I just scribbled down here, and I don't know if it's anything, so maybe this is stupid, but rather than looking for purpose and trying to uncover what our purpose is, because maybe we don't know, right? Like, to your point, what does an 18-year-old know about what they want to do when they're 50? I have no idea. And so maybe it's not about, doing things, that are our purpose. Rather, it's doing things on purpose and with purpose. So rather than understanding, who we are and what we're meant to be and all these sort of grand ethereal things that we just don't know, because there's really nobody that can tell us, right? It's got to come from within. And I'm a firm believer that you kind of have to layer on so many, so much life first,
Yeah.
kind of get to
Yes.
what you need. And so, but I think if you pursue almost anything, whether it is a career that you don't love or it's the pursuit of a new career, but if you do it on purpose and you do it with purpose, so you're doing it confidently and you're moving in a direction, whether or not it's a permanent, final, whatever direction, and you're being, purposeful with who you're choosing, so I'm not just choosing, I don't want to work for the coal factory. I want to work for the, shoe factory or whatever, I mean, like, but being purposeful about who we're choosing, not just shotgunning 1,000 agencies, for example.
Yep.
I think maybe that's purpose, not really the other kind of purpose.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like the concept. And what word kept going over in my head is intentional. You're being intentional about the choices that you're making. So the purpose with the purpose. Yeah.
And I think that's right, because I think so many people, I mean, there's all these pressures, right? Like you're saying, high rent, social pressure, to look a certain way or drive the right kind of car or wear the right kind of whatever. And, there's all these different pressures on you that are sort of clouding your ability to just go do what you want. Right. But at the end of the day, if you're intentional about what you're choosing, so if you can say, okay, well, I like this job, but I'm going into it with the intent that I need this to pay rent so I can move out of my mom's house. And then the next job I'm looking for, I'm doing with the intent of dropping my roommates and moving into a place of my own. And then, and so on. But, being intentional, or to stick with my thing, purposeful, stick with that, but I think the idea of just doing stuff on purpose and with purpose, chest up, chin high, and going into things, I think, is maybe as valuable as trying to seek this elusive purpose that maybe none of us will ever really find.
Well, that was depressing, but I totally.
Well, I guess what I mean, and not in a negative way, but in that it's forever evolving, right? Like,
yes,
I'm 42 now, but what are my needs at 80? Like, I have no idea what I'm going to care about then, right?
Right.
And just like now, I have no relationship with the 18-year-old me, right? And I just think, and, I mean, Mike and I have done 280, 285 interviews for this podcast. And the one thing we've discovered with almost everybody is that even your overnight successes, are these 10-year overnight successes. And it took a certain amount of just layering on life. Like there is no shortcut. There is no, everybody gets there in a different way. But at the end of the day, you have to do so much. And you kind of have to thrash around a little bit to finally get there.
I think that's a big part of it, is the thrashing around, especially in your 20s. I think that is the time to do that, to try and figure out what makes sense for you. Like going back to my son and doing the sales, he's surrounded out there with people that are 26, 27, 28 years old, and they're multi-millionaires, $50 million, $100 million. And they're in their late 20s. And of course, he's like looking at this going, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And in my head, I'm like, no, that's not your path. That's not your journey. That's not who you are. I know you really well. And I never said that. Oh gosh, I hope he doesn't watch this video.
I'm going to tag him in it.
Okay. Anyway, I was like, no, that's not your journey. I can't see that being your journey, because you've got all these other gifts and sorry, that was my dog sneezing. All these other gifts that you need to kind of put out there. And he's slowly learning that. And he came back to me at one point and he said, I think I realized that that's just not my journey. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I wanted to be that person that could make multi-millions and be set up for life by the time I was 30. He goes, but I know that's not who I am, and that I'm going to have to, go down a different path. And he says, and I'm okay with that. And I'm like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
That should be the goal for everybody, right? Is to be satisfied. Well, satisfied with where you're at. That doesn't mean you can't aspire for more or wish for other things or whatever. But I mean, don't tear down where you are. I use this phrase all the time, and it should be a drinking game or something with this podcast. But it's this idea that basically, it took every step you've ever taken to get to where you are today, right? There's no such thing as right or wrong or misstep or not misstep. It's no matter what, we don't get to this podcast with you if I don't take every step prior, and so. For people like that, for me anyway, it's given me some respite to, not chase that stuff or not feel bad that I haven't achieved it yet. Right. Because maybe I'm just taking a weird way, right? I just have to get there in my own way. And so, but, because it's really easy to fall into that trap. I see it with my kid all the time. He idolizes a bunch of like NFL guys and stuff like that. And it's like, the money and all that stuff. It's like, well, maybe you'll get there, but maybe not. And you've got to be okay with it, anyway.
Either way.
And
yeah.
So I think that there's something to that idea of just kind of being good with you.
And, sales for his first job, that is the perfect first job because it allows you to talk to people. It allows you to start building your network, and it makes you more comfortable being around people. And sales is a great first job. If you haven't done it, go do it. I think it's a necessity. And anyways, hey, we're at that time. Oh. It's been an hour. I know it feels like it's been 10 minutes, but we're there. Do you want to tell people where they can reach out and get in touch with you?
Sure. And thank you guys. This was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. They could reach out to me at Ikigai. Oh, gosh, I'm trying to think of my, the
website that I've got is ikigaicareercoaching.com.
That's it.
And we'll also put it in the show notes for people that haven't brushed up on their Japanese.
Okay.
So I think you're pretty active on LinkedIn, so we'll make sure you share a link there also.
Yes, cool. Definitely. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Well, yeah. Thank you guys so much. I was so nervous, but this is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. I mean, like we mentioned, everybody's busy, everybody's got their things, but I think that this information is really important for people who are on the job hunt, considering a career pivot, or maybe in danger of a job search. I think it's, much like sales, I think, networking is something you do always, not when you need it, but have it in the pipeline always so that you, have something to fall back on, and so I think it's really important that if you're not networking already, you get started today. And it doesn't have to be much. There's a million online meetups. There's a million, in-person events. It's very easy to find something to do. So
there's lots of avenues.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Christy. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to share.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next week.